Alrighty, I think we should be live now. I'll just quickly check on all the platforms. Just quickly open YouTube and check. Yes, we are live. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first episode of Observability Unplugged. Super very excited to have you here. My name is Kunal. If you have not seen our previous live streams, my name is Kunal. I'm working as a devil engineer at Randoli, and I'm joined by Rajit here today, yet again in another live stream. If you have not seen our previous live streams, Rajit has been my co-speaker, has been joining in these live streams pretty much all the time. But Rajit, if anyone is not familiar with you, can you please introduce yourself and let them know what you're working on recently?
Sure, yeah. Hey, I'm Rajat. I'm the founder and CTO for Andoli. These days, I spend the majority of my time either talking to customers about OpenTelemetry and observability, or working on a product implementing OpenTelemetry based observability.
Amazing, yeah, and thank you so much for joining me here today. So we we talk about observability unplugged, right? So this is the episode one. What exactly is this? I'm just going to take 1 minute of your time to explain what are we doing here today, right? So me and Rajit always are having conversations around new topics in observability because our company is working in the observability space, so we are always trying to stay ahead in the latest technologies which are being used in the ecosystem, hearing from people around different use cases that they are using in their organizations. And we thought that because the observability ecosystem is evolving very very rapidly, right? There is something new happening every week in a lot of different areas. So we thought it would be interesting to come live and share this with everyone, whatever we are learning. Rajit has been talking to a lot of people, a lot of companies, so he has that real world connection with what is actually being used right in the industry. And me, I'm very new to the observability ecosystem. It's been only 6 to 8 months for me, and there are still a lot of things for me to learn. But I have had very much experience, very much hands-on experience with a lot of different observability technologies. So these live chats are going to be very informal, and our aim is to help you stay connected with what is happening in the observability space, the latest and the newest trends which is happening. So the first part would be we'll be going over through some latest technologies or latest happenings in the observability space, and then each live chat we are also going to cover one particular concept, right, that we feel is important for you to understand, again from the observability space. So for this one, because this is episode one and we're going to keep things interesting and very light for all of you, we are going to talk about LLM observability a bit, right? So there is some latest development that has been happening within OpenTelemetry related to LLM observability. And then in the second segment, we are also going to touch a little bit about OpenTelemetry. What exactly is that, if you're not already familiar with it? But with that being said, I would love for people who are joining in the chat. I see a few people are joining. I can see the icon here that a few people have been joining. We would love to hear any topic or any particular area that you want us to explore live, right? Because this is unfiltered, live, informal conversation. We love for you also to come up on the live stream with us sometime and have a conversation with us around observability. And yeah, feel free to suggest, feel free to ask your questions, and we would love to answer. Great. So let's start with LLM observability. I'm quickly going to share my screen because this is pretty interesting. So if folks aren't familiar with OpenTelemetry yet, OpenTelemetry, we are going to cover that right now as well. But OpenTelemetry is an open standard for observability, which helps you to standardize the way you are uh, collecting, processing, managing, exporting telemetry to different backends, right? We are going to cover a little bit about OpenTelemetry, and we have had previous conversations uh, in live streams and talks as well. He recently gave a talk about this in KCD Bangalore as well. But what is interesting is, and this is something that I recently found out, was OpenTelemetry, the community is diving into the generative AI observability space, right? Um, which is pretty interesting because Gen AI is something that has boomed in the past 2 3 years. We have all been using Gen AI. I don't literally see any person not using Chat GPT in their day to day life. I don't know about you, Rajat. Do you use Chat GPT in your day to day life? Are you using any AI tools right now?
Yes, I mean, I do use ChatGPT probably once a day at least. And then I'm tinkering with some coding using Klein and VS Code. So, I mostly use Claude, but, trying to use that to help me with whatever little coding I do these days, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I cannot imagine my life without ChatGPT right now. To be honest, I literally use it every day, and I think it definitely has impacted my workflow a lot. I mean, the things that took a lot of time for me, it has definitely reduced the time. But coming back to the topic of Gen AI observability, OpenTelemetry is now delving into this space as well, and there is a special interest group that has been formed specifically designed to determine how you can observe generative AI and LLM specific applications. Right now, this is a particular link. I'll just leave this link in the chat as well for people to have a look. Okay, we have a few people. Hey Siddhant, nice for you to join. Yes. So this is because generative AI, as you can see, they have written that because generative AI is evolving really fast, and traditional observability of Python-based observability, right? Python instrumentation that OpenTelemetry had, that's not enough for LLM-specific applications because fundamentally speaking, observing LLM apps is a bit different because there are tons of different kinds of metrics that you need to track, right? So this is where this new particular special interest group has been formed uh, under the open telemetry community, and they're specifically focused on setting up certain semantic conventions, setting up certain specifications on how you can observe generative AI applications, right? Now, the main aim that this SIG is trying to solve is bringing different use cases around Gen AI observability. Right? What are the things that you should track? Uh, as I mentioned, right, there are fundamentally speaking LLM observability or Gen AI observability. These are two separate things. We can discuss a bit more about that as well. But there are certain differences in what you need to track when it comes to Gen AI observability. So, for example, if you're tracking an LLM based app, you might want to track latency, throughput, error rate of that specific LLM operation. There is the cost angle as well, right? And cost is directly related to the number of tokens that you're using, the input and the output tokens. So, the whole aim for this SIG is to determine what are we going to track, how are we going to track, and how can we bring a lot of different tools which are already working in this particular space under one umbrella, right? This is pretty interesting because I think this shows that if open telemetry, because open telemetry has now become the one of the top standards, open standards in the observability space, if they are now delving into the AI and sort of the Gen AI observability space, that means something, right? So, Rajat, according to you, what does this signify? Like a project and a big community like Open Telemetry delving into the Gen AI space, what does that mean? And have you have have you been having some conversations with companies who have been using Gen AI in production right now? Because sometimes what I felt was that companies right now are still skeptical about using LLM and generative AI in production. So, what are your thoughts on this?
I think that's definitely changing. There's a lot more organizations, from startups all the way to the enterprises, are rapidly embracing generative AI based applications. Some of them are already sort of running in production, but there is definitely a lot of interest in this area, and people are actively working, experimenting on these areas as we speak. And then the conversations that I had, currently the focus is mostly on, what's our strategy around this? How do we, leverage generative AI? What are the implications of, using Gen AI? Whether what are the risk factors? So a lot of people are trying to figure out their strategy around, how to use it. And then some organizations have sort of evolved beyond that point to actually building applications and at least running pilot projects in production and then some organizations are really far ahead of the curve where they're actually running applications in production, real proper application production. So that's so there's a it's an interesting time, and I think when people start to start to run this in production, naturally the conversation turns to, how do I monitor these, right? So for example, I just mentioned about the security implications of it, especially within LLMs. There's the issue of hallucination, right? The correctness aspect of it. How do we measure these things? How do we monitor these things? There's also the cost aspect of it. Right? Last week I had a conversation with one customer. In one particular week, they suddenly had a spike in token usage, which resulted in an increase in their bill. So there are things like this that will come into play as people start to use observable Gen AI in production.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for sharing that. And I feel one point which you mentioned, right, is the security implications, right? And I think that's like one of the factors which that's why I've seen companies are still a bit skeptical in using Gen AI, even though it is, it provides a lot of benefits. The main reason which companies are skeptical right now is the security implications about this, right? And that's why I feel the whole topic of data sovereignty is very much connected now to how you are using Gen AI in production, and when you're using LLM specific workloads in production as well. I've seen a lot of conversations around that too. I think this is a topic that we can definitely chat about in one of the other episodes, right? Because it's a very vast topic, and maybe we can show all of you a demo application of how, what are the things that you can track. But just to summarize this a bit, if anyone wants to get involved with this particular special interest group, if you're interested in Gen AI, if you're interested in LLM applications, if you are a developer who has been building with LLMs, this is definitely something which you can check out. Right now, at this particular point, they have already shipped an hotel instrumentation library for OpenAI, which is pretty interesting. And this is a particular blog that you all can check out, where they are guiding you on how you can instrument your Python application using that OpenAI library. This is something that you can definitely check out. I can leave the link in the comments as well. And a few more developments are already going on. I was pretty interested to know this, and I would definitely try my best to get involved into this as well, because this is a space that I want to really explore. And as you mentioned, Rajat, a lot of companies are now changing this, and a lot of them are also looking to implement Gen AI in production too. So I think this is a nice development that OpenTelemetry we see from OpenTelemetry's side as well. Alrighty, so I'll just quickly check the chat if we have any questions. Okay, we don't have any questions. So this was the news, something that I wanted to share with everyone that I've been learning recently. But as I mentioned, right, in every chat, in every live stream, we'll be going over through one particular concept, right? And today, because we are going to keep things light and we are going to keep things sweet, so we'll be diving a bit into OpenTelemetry, right? um a lot of you in the chat, I know Siddharth is in the chat right now. We have been having a lot of conversations around OpenTelemetry. We had one of a previous live streams as well, where we talked a lot about OpenTelemetry, why does it exist, what problem it's solving in the ecosystem right now, and you know uh, how people can get started with it, right? So if you're not already familiar with OpenTelemetry, I'll just give you a primer of that, and you can definitely check out the live stream that we did, right? But today, Rajat, I want to have a bit deep dive conversation with you on OpenTelemetry because you are a lot more connected with users, right? You're talking to companies on a daily basis. People are now a bit familiar with OpenTelemetry, right? They understand the importance of using it in production. They understand, okay, uh, it helps us not to be logged in by a particular vendor. It's a really great way for us to get those unified insights that we want from different types of telemetry data. But I want to understand from you, why do you think there is so much talk about open standards in observability, right? And I'm not just talking, I know that open telemetry is on top of that particular list, but generally speaking, why do you think open standards is important now more than ever to be implemented in observability? And what are the certain problems that you see can be solved using these open standards, for example open telemetry in production?
Yeah, for sure. So open standards in general, we know historically has been great for the industry. There are two things with open standards that I see that is valuable. One is the fact that it generally prevents lock-in. Lock-in to a particular technology or lock-in to a particular vendor. When I said lock-in to a particular, I meant lock-in to a particular implementation or lock into a particular vendor. The second, I think, important aspect of open standards is the innovation aspect of it. When there are open standards, it makes it easy for the ecosystem to build stuff on top of it, right? And that we are seeing that with open telemetry, like it's being extended and imagined beyond the basic sort of signals and use cases. So anytime there is open standards and if there is enough participants, not just the technology vendors but the end users, as well as the other community players, when they all get together, it usually results in something very positive for the industry. So I'm pretty big on open standards, and I think it will continue to drive innovation, and more people will participate in the process when there is sort of like no barrier for entry and there's transparency in the process, right? And I think the other thing with open standards is usually there's a governing body attached to it. There's always going to be a process around it. So more people will feel comfortable in not just contributing but also adopting, because they feel like it won't be biased towards just any one vendor or any one particular sort of interest group, right? There will always be certain issues and shortcomings. That is life, but in general, I think it's a very, very positive thing. So that's something that we should all be supporting.
That's an interesting take. Yeah, I still remember, uh, not in observability, but I learned about this term open standards, I think 2 years back, when I got familiarized with cloud native open standards. And those are basically, we have this CRI, container runtime interface, CNI, CSI for Kubernetes. And collectively, I don't think a lot of people knew this previously, that collectively these all are known as open standards. And interestingly, I also gave a talk on this topic. That was my first in-person talk at Cube Day Bangalore, and I covered all of these different open standards. And I still remember studying about the importance of, like, why these were created in the first place for Kubernetes, right? Because till a certain point, as a container runtime, Docker was the only one which was being used with Kubernetes, right? But after, then the community came together, and they thought, hey, we are sort of vendor locked with only one type of container runtime. Why don't we create a standard where you can plug in different types of container runtimes with Kubernetes, right, and run them according to your particular use case? That's how CRI was born. And similarly, CNI for network interface, CSI for storage interface, so on and so forth. So that time I saw the power of open standards, and then hearing the same term again now being used in observability, I think that's the same kind of impact it is going to bring. And OpenTelemetry being the lead in this particular space, I completely agree with you. But I'm curious though. This might be a this might be a question out of pure curiosity. I would love to know from you. Do you think that people, because when we talk about open standards, right, when we talk about open telemetry, we talk about the vendor neutral nature of telemetry, right? Do you think people, or I'm not specifying any company or person, but do you think generally people are still underestimating the power of vendor neutral telemetry in production?
I don't think so. Most customers, if you talk to, don't want to be vendor locked in, and I think it's also major pain point. By talking to customers, I know that some customers are sort of stuck with some vendor right now because the cost of migrating off that particular vendor, at least in the short term, might not be financially viable because there's a lot of dev effort involved in it. So the even if there is cost savings, the short term pain of both time and effort to do that migration, it's preventing them from making those changes, right? So I think most vendors, most customers, especially the organizations that have been around for a while, and I think the industry was pretty bad for vendor locking, 20 years ago, or even 10 years ago. So things have evolved a lot since then. So people understand the drawbacks of being vendor locked in. And I think most enterprise architects these days, most enterprise architecture groups are paying a lot of attention to open standards and open source, so that they don't get cornered, by using proprietary standards, and being vendor locked in. So definitely, people understand the value of it, in my opinion, and I think they are. Sometimes it takes a while for organizations to trust. I think credibility and trust in a particular standard, because people want to sometimes take some time to see if this is worthwhile investing our time, right? I mean, if you look at even Kubernetes too, initially there was not a lot of traction. Then over a period of time, people started to adopt Kubernetes. So everybody kind of takes a wait and see approach, and there's always the early adopters, and there's the classic adoption curve, right? So there's always people who would take a wait and see approach, and that's not because they don't see the value of the open standards, but it's just a matter of wanting to make sure that these open standards, or this particular standard is going to be there for a while. Because there's always that danger of adopting a standard, and then that standard sort of fizzles out, and then they'll have to redo everything, right? So generally, when people start to adopt, it's when they see there's some momentum behind it, and that's usually multiple vendors behind the standards. Because at the end of the day, vendor support is important in any kind of standard. There's a bit of a conflict of interest when there's vendors who are driving the standard, but in my opinion, it's also a necessary evil, because someone has to implement that standard. And I think it's very important for a healthy community to have a set of vendors backing it, right? Because they will drive forward, they'll keep the standard alive, they'll keep evolving the standard. And then when there's more and more adoption comes in, more vendors will also will want to join in as well. So sorry, I gave you like a bit of a long answer, but all in all, I think it's people will take time to kind of warm up to a standard and have the confidence to adopt it.
I absolutely love that point. And I definitely feel that a lot more people are now moving towards adopting OpenTelemetry as an open standard, right? We both have seen this. We both have seen the impact of conversations that we had in KCD Bangalore recently, right? When we gave that talk around OpenTelemetry. By the way, if you would love to see that talk to people who are watching, I can drop the link in the chat as well. That was a pretty interesting talk. We took a different angle to explain open telemetry right there, which was very much related to your cost of observability and how much control you have your data. So make sure to check that out. I'll not spoil that for you here, but that's a very interesting take. So I just want to quickly go over through, because we are discussing open telemetry today, right? I'll just quickly give everyone who's watching right now a bit of a primer of open telemetry, right? I When I talk about primer, I would say what are the essential concepts that you need to know in order to get started with OTel, right? If you are someone who's thinking of adopting an open standard in your organization, if you think that this is something that you should do and you think that this is something that will help you, these are the things that you need to be aware of, right? So I'll just quickly share my screen, and I'm gonna keep this short because there is a lot to learn about open telemetry, and I think we are gonna have multiple sessions on this as well. So I prepared this very rough diagram. Please ignore that. Uh, so in order for you to get started, right? If you wish to just fiddle bit around with it a bit, build some demo applications and stuff like that. So the number one thing that you need to understand is what are the signals which are covered in open telemetry currently, right? And you have, I can increase the font size as well. You have all the major trio that we can call the major umbrella of telemetry in under observability, which is the logs, metrics, and traces. So you have the ability to collect, process, and manage and export logs, metrics, and traces to different supported OTel backends. Currently the two which are being used currently which are the two which are being worked in progress, which the community is working on, is events and profiles. And something interesting is profiles, right? Because CPU profiling, or the term profiling, so if anyone is not familiar with the term profiling, profiling means that, let's take an example of CPU, right? So CPU usage is a metric that you can track for a particular application, right? Over the period of time, how much the application is using the CPU, let's say, and at one point, if it's spiking, you can send out an alert. But profiling goes a bit deep down, and it tells you what part of your application or what part of the code is using the most amount of CPU, right? So this is a pretty new, I would say, telemetry signal, and the community is still working on this. But I have seen certain use cases where profiling has been definitely been beneficial. Rajat, I'm curious. Have you seen any user stories or use cases where profiling has been used in production and companies are using it right now, or is it still in early stages according to you?
So the CPU profiling is not something new. It's been around, yeah, for a while. A lot of observability, or rather what we would used to call APM tools, application performance monitoring tools, used to have this feature even, a couple, 10, 15 years back. So that CPU profiling has been around for a while in various different forms. And I think what's new with the OTel um, community is that they're trying to standardize around profiles, so that that also becomes a standard telemetry signal. So coming back to your question about CPU profiling, what's the importance of it? Exactly what you mentioned initially. So when you detect high CPU usage, and you want to figure out which part of the code that's taking up the CPU cycles, the profiling kind of helps, right? So it'll produce what you would call a flame graph or an icicle, depending on how we orient the graph. And what it shows is the different calls that are made within the application, and then you would be able to pinpoint bottlenecks. Because if you take the sort of like the tracers are a little bit more high level. Not just the traces span multiple microservices, even within a microservice or even within a process, you could have multiple spans within the trace, right? But those are what people would add or get auto instrumented based on libraries. But if you want to go like deeper into sort of like the call stack within an application, that's where the sort of the profiling comes in. So you can get a sense of the CPU usage.
It's pretty interesting. Yeah, I think I'll need to spend some more time on understanding profiling, because I've read a couple of blogs on how people are using profiling now, and it definitely provides a lot of benefits in my opinion, right? If you track this nicely. But coming back to the concepts, right? Thank you so much for sharing that, Rajat. Coming back to the concepts, now there are a lot of nuances to these particular signals as well. For example, if you talk about distributed tracing, uh, there is a special concept called as distributed tracing, right? And how OpenTelemetry supports that out of the box, right? uh, we'll not dive deep into this particular concept right now, but this is something that you can definitely explore on how OpenTelemetry supports distributed tracing out of the box. But apart from these, the second essential thing that is important for you to know is what are the main components, right? How hotel enables you to being when neutral, how it is able to take the telemetry, process that, and send that to a supported backend, right? So these are the main components that OpenTelemetry is based off, I would say. Number one is the hotel spec, which is uh, you can consider this as a rule book of OpenTelemetry, where all these specifications, rules, semantic conventions are written on how telemetry is captured, processed, and then exported to a particular backend. There are APIs and SDKs. If you are a developer, um, you can use the APIs and SDKs to instrument your application via these particular APIs and SDKs, and you can send that telemetry to the central component, right? And there is a protocol called as OTLP, right? And the full form for this is Open Telemetry Line Protocol, and this is what enables that vendor neutral behavior of OpenTelemetry. Now, previously, if we talk about before OpenTelemetry, right, the telemetry data that we have here in logs, metrics, and traces, these are generated in different formats, right? So it took a lot of manual effort, and it was sort of a difficult thing for companies to sort of collect these in different formats and be able to visualize this in 10 different tools, right? What OTLP does, this it converts all of them into a single format, and then it feeds that to OpenTelemetry. So that's how you are able to take the logs, metrics, traces, all of these different telemetry data from different applications. Using a single standard, you can send that to OpenTelemetry, and using that single standard, you can export that to multiple backends, multiple tools, right? Which is pretty interesting. Now, if you are a DevOps engineer, if you're a SRE platform engineer, you can use the Kubernetes operator for OpenTelemetry, and you can auto instrument your application without even touching the code, right? I think Kubernetes operator is an interesting topic, and I would definitely love to show you a working example of this in another live stream, right? Which is pretty interesting. And last but not the least is the most important one, which is the hotel collector, right? So to bring all of this together, right, I'll show you a bit of a diagram which I made in the past, and I've been using this at multiple places. So how hotel works is you have these different applications. You instrument your code using the auto instrumentation libraries. If you're a developer, if you're an SRE DevOps engineer, and you are using Kubernetes, you can use the Kubernetes operator to auto instrument your services. You send that to the hotel collector, which is a central processing unit of OpenTelemetry, which receives the telemetry. You can define some processors, right? I think we are going to have a separate session on processors as well, because there are a lot of different kinds of processors and how you use them in combination. Because this but how you use processors in combination will enhance the quality of your telemetry, which is very important, right? So this is something that you can use. And then lastly, we have the exporters, which you can use to export to different hotel supported backends. That could be open source tools like Prometheus, Jaeger. These could be hotel native vendors as well, according to what you want to use, right? But these are sort of the main, I would say, main hotel concepts that one should be aware of if they want to get started. Rajat, is there something more specific you would want to mention from this particular checklist, that if if any engineer wants to get started with OpenTelemetry, just try to fiddle with that, they should be aware of, apart from the things which I've covered.
No, I think
Is there
you
anything?
covered the basics pretty well. Really, nothing much to add. I think it's now more than ever. It's easier to kind of get started with observability using OpenTelemetry. Lots of good examples there. Hopefully, we are going to add to that pile and add a couple more examples. But yeah, it's I think this is a pretty good list to kind of look at, right? Like you kind of already highlighted the fact that if you're on Kubernetes, it's a pretty easy way to get going with OpenTelemetry operator. But one thing I want to highlight is that OpenTelemetry is not just limited to the Kubernetes ecosystem, even though it's a CNCF project. You can very well leverage OpenTelemetry, outside of Kubernetes. And in fact, I mean, that's what we are doing right now. Currently, these days, we are focused on enabling OpenTelemetry applications running on virtual machines, Fargate, Lambda, or Google Cloud Run, etc. So it's not definitely it's not something that's limited to Kubernetes. If you are not using Kubernetes, don't be disheartened. OpenTelemetry is something that you can use outside of the Kubernetes ecosystem.
Absolutely. And LLM as well. Right now, it's being added to the list too,
Correct.
which
Yes.
in which you can use OpenTelemetry as well. It's pretty interesting, right? So this is sort of this was a very short primer, and I'm sadly we are at the end of time for this particular chat. But that's the aim, right? We are gonna keep this chat around 30 minutes, very short, and we are gonna give these short insights to all of you so that you stay connected. And this is how we are gonna be covering various topics in each live chat. If anyone who's watching, if you're interested about a certain aspect of observability that you want us to explore and cover, feel free to comment that as well in the description. And I've shared some of the resources in the comment section as well, so you can check out this particular talk that we recently gave at KCD Bangalore on OpenTelemetry. There we took a different angle to explain OpenTelemetry, but the concepts remain the same. And we have also talked about, if you want to get started, we have also given you a checklist of things that you can initially do in order to get started. Plus, if you're already using OpenTelemetry, how you can scale that in production. That is also covered in this particular talk, so you can make sure to check that out. And coming back to the first point which I mentioned about GenAI observability, if you wish to get involved in this particular special interest group, uh, then you can definitely head over to this particular link and check them out. They organize certain meetings, I think every other week. You can check out the meeting timings and you can get involved with that. I'm looking forward to getting involved with this particular special interest group because I'm genuinely interested about LLMs and Gen AI itself, right? This is something for me to explore too. But yeah, we are at the end of this episode 1. I hope you had fun. I hope you had fun as well, Rajat, talking
I,
about
I did, I
new.
did, and we'll continue to, I think it's going to be bi-weekly, and we'll try to make this as a fun experience as possible. So hopefully, as the episodes go, we will also figure out, better ways to make this a more fun and enjoyable and interesting and learning experience for everyone. So we look forward to all your
Absolutely.
participation. Yes.
Yeah, we'll definitely try to make it more fun and uh, respect everyone's time as well. So short, sweet, while while giving you all the insights that you need, and you can take home the insights and you can work on the stuff that you're already working on. But with that, we'll bid you farewell for now, and we'll see you back in 2 weeks with another new topic. Again, if you have any other topics suggestion for us, feel free to comment that down below, and we'll see you in another live chat. Bye bye. Bye, everyone.
See you guys. Bye bye.
Thank you for joining.